Fox News alert as we bring in this election day. Finally hear from millions of Americans across the country. Months of intense campaigning, political ads, big names on the trail. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Three key races that we're watching could signal where Americans are politically before next year's midterm elections. In New York City, voters will decide if Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani will be the next mayor of America's largest city and the financial capital of the world. Virginia and New Jersey are choosing their next governors. And President Trump pushed for Republicans in both of those states last night.
Jack Ciattarelli is a businessman and a public servant who has devoted his life to the people of New Jersey. He's fighting for lower taxes, lower prices, lower cost of living, much of the same things that I'm fighting for. Mikey Sherrill will send New Jersey into a death spiral, deficit spiral. The entire Democrat ticket in Virginia is totally unfit to hold office, frankly. I mean, they are the worst.
The president also weighed in on New York City's mayoral election, posting this. This once great city has zero chance of success or even survival. It can only get worse with a communist at the helm. Whether you personally like Andrew Cuomo or not, you really have no choice. You must vote for him. He is capable of it. Mamdani is not. The New York Post sums up Trump's message. Keep the commie out. Cuomo has gained some ground in the polls leading up to this election day. A viral campaign video may have helped.
Were you thinking about voting for him? Yeah, are you scared because of his resume? This is all he's done in his career. He never had a real job till he was 30.
That's funny.
Are you concerned a little bit reading that resume?
Yeah.
It's a little scary, right? Would you hire someone who missed half their current job?
Even the left-leaning Washington Post editorial board has a warning. Here's part of it. One of the most notable aspects of Mamdani's political success is that voters know what they're getting. He was born into a life of wealth and privilege, and from that perch, he adopted a worldview centered around destroying the economic system that made his adopted country thrive. Voters have been reminded repeatedly about Mamdani's long history of radical politics. He suggests rerunning a long list of failed social policy experiments. CB Cotton in New York City. CB.
Hey, Harris. Well, there's been a steady number of voters here at this polling site, one of several across the Big Apple, giving New Yorkers one final shot to help decide who should lead the city forward. Today, self-described Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani and former Governor Andrew Cuomo both cast their ballots. Last night, President Trump officially endorsed Cuomo. As you mentioned, Cuomo is running as an independent. Trump also threatened to cut federal funding if Mamdani wins. But this morning, Mamdani said those are dollars he'll fight for.
I look forward to utilizing every single tool at my disposal as the next mayor of this city to fight for the people of it.
Mamdani's closest competitor, Cuomo, has repeatedly told New Yorkers that Mamdani is too inexperienced with socialist policies that don't work. And today on Fox, Cuomo suggested President Trump's endorsement is the result of a dire situation.
President Trump is pragmatic. He is telling them the reality of the situation. It's about saving the city, and that is not being overly dramatic. Mamdani is a real socialist.
As for Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa, he's resisted calls to drop out, repeating on the trail just yesterday that he's the one to bring back law and order and saying that only the people will decide the outcome of this race.
Every person is entitled to their point of view. One person, one vote.
Sliwa already cast his ballot during early voting. In Harris, the polls stay open today through 9 p.m. local time. Back to you.
CB, just real quickly, you know, everybody's race right now is being talked about across the country. We're watching a couple that are bellwether for the midterm elections, so we know that. I'm wondering about, though, that voter intensity coming into today. I mean, we did see Republicans in New Jersey voting early, and that wasn't normal. What are you hearing about what's happening early vote here in New York City?
Well, what I'm noticing is that during the early vote period, which ended on Sunday, I saw a lot of older voters during that time. And we know that Cuomo is faring better with older voters, people older than 50. And so he has been pretty confident that it's that early vote, that early voter turnout that's going to help him flip the race. Today, though, Harris, I'm seeing a lot more young voters, and we know Mamdani has done better with those younger voters. So it might come down to an 11th hour outcome with this mayoral race.
All right, well, we're there for the 10th and 11 hours, so to speak. C.B. Cotton, thank you very much. Gianno Caldwell, Fox News political analyst, joins me now by phone. And Gianno, this is such an interesting point in our history because it isn't just about New York politics, which, I mean, outside of New York, I don't know if anybody ever really cares. But it is a trend line seeing a Democratic socialist, someone who I call, because of his proposed policies, a communist, and the president calls him that too, kind of take hold of a city where really nobody knew him just a minute ago, it feels.
Right, and they don't know him still. The truth of the matter is, and I'll tell anyone this, if someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. This is a man who wants to abolish prisons. This is a man who's called the NYPD racist organization. This is a man who wants to give government full control of people's lives. That is not a recipe for success. I think many politicians, whether you be left or right, can admit to that. But this is where we are. And as you mentioned, Harris, this is New York City, but New York City is a global city. It's just not a town within America. This is the financial hub of the world, one in which many people across the world actually depend on its functioning and its success. So this is bigger than just New York City. This is something that can impact the rest of the world for generations to come. Harris.
Yeah, and across the country, we're seeing these Democrat socialists pop up in other places. You've got Michelle Wu in Seattle, Omar Fatah in Minneapolis, and several other places. And so this, when I say a trend line of politics in the U.S., that's what I think Americans care about. What you're talking about is financially across the globe, as we sit at the hub of finance here in New York City. Let's move to this, because I want to get it from a Republican and independent perspective. New York Wall Street, or rather the New Wall Street Journal column with this headline: Mamdani is a gift which Trump should unwrap carefully. And here's part of it. How far the Trump-Mamdani fight will go is hard to say, but the president will clearly feel he has an opportunity to mess productively with the man in Gracie Mansion on issues like immigration, crime, and the city's finances. However, Republicans should be wary of this distinction between the posturing politics of a social media-savvy ideologue and the concerns of the voters who elected him. What's your response?
Well, I got to tell you, this has been truly one of those campaigns that has been pushed by many folks on the left, social media, to that point about it being a slick campaign, yes, but it's not been a campaign on substance. The problem is, I think, with Mamdani and people who support him is many of these are young voters who've not actually lived life. They've not been out in the workforce. They feel that things are too high, and I know in many instances they have been, and New York is an expensive city. But you have to have serious people talking about the challenges with serious solutions. Socialism is not a serious solution to the ills of the folks in New York City. It may sound good. It may look good on social media, but the truth is, in action, it leads to nothing but disaster, and people must be very much aware of that. You know me, Harris, crime has impacted my family greatly.
Yes.
And unfortunately, so many folks around the country, including in New York, have had those similar experiences. You cannot say that you're going to defund the police, and that's what you've been saying your entire career. Now you're like, oh, maybe I had a change of thought. You're demonizing the people who are looking to protect the citizens of the city, and you're going to run people out. We saw the New York Post deliver a headline saying that almost 1 million people would flee New York City if he won. After COVID, 500,000 people moved out of New York City, and they took $21 billion with them. This would be far worse, and people would not return back home. And that's the unfortunate reality.
Well, and look, when you talk about people leaving, you're talking about a tax base that gets hit because that revenue won't be coming in from some of the wealthiest. I want to get to this. A Free Press piece warns the Democrat Socialists of America, the organization looking to push aside the mainstream Democratic Party. Well, maybe it is, actually. Maybe it has become an organization of people that could take over a party. We don't know yet. Here's a quote. Mamdani supporters see the Democrat Party establishment not as leaders to be followed, but relics to be replaced. To them, they are symbols of a party that has lost touch with the working class and deserves to be swept aside. A review of thousands of internal documents show that the organization's leaders view Mamdani as a tool in their agenda to abolish prisons and borders and ultimately end what it calls the barbaric order of capitalism. Could one organization take over a Democrat party? What do you think, Gianno?
Well, let me take you back a little bit in history. Joe Biden's term. Remember that the progressives, the socialists said that they were going to push Joe Biden far to the left. Were they not successful? Absolutely they were.
Yeah.
So I would argue that many Democrats right now are afraid of Mamdani actually winning because they know it is inching towards socialism more so and the destruction of what the traditional values that Democratic voters hold near. Why do you think that Donald Trump brought in so many working class voters? Because the Democratic Party has constantly failed them. He's spoken to those working class voters and brought them over to the GOP. They know with a Mamdani win, this will be more of the same. More people leaving the Democratic Party, going into the Republican Party, and that's what they fear the most.
So
but I can see it happening.
Yeah, and so what you're banking on tonight in New York City for those who don't want Mamdani is that Republicans won't stay home and won't vote for Curtis Sliwa, the Republican in the race. Cuomo's running as an independent because Mamdani beat him in the primary. Or when they do come, that they vote for a guy who they remember very much as a traditional Democrat, who they don't agree with ideologically. I mean, this is going to be one to watch tonight. Gianno Caldwell, thank you for being with me in Focus.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.